Hello, and welcome to St. John's Anglican Cathedral in the Diocese of Rupertsland. This is the oldest Anglican parish west of the Great Lakes. It has been here since 1820, when John West came as a missionary to this part of the world. However, before we start our tour, I want to give you a brief lesson in ecclesiastical geography. Now, you may not be aware of this, but churches do not pay any attention to the geography outside their doors. You see, in a church, the east is always where the altar is. So even though our altar is in what is the north end of the church, it doesn't matter. It's not the north end, it's the east end. So what would be the south end is the west end, what would be the west end is now the north end, and what would be the east end is now the south end. Now that I've thoroughly confused you, keep in mind that ecclesiastical geography pays no attention to the geography outside the church. Now, let's start our tour of St. John's. So, before we start our tour, I need to explain to you the shape of the church. Now, most people looking at churches will say, well, they're in a cruciform shape, so that's obviously because they're Christians and the cross is important to them. No. Most churches built before 1950 are in the shape of the court of the Emperor Constantine. Now, you may not know much about Constantine, but he was the Roman emperor in the 4th century, beginning of the 4th century, who had the vision. He was preparing for battle, not an unusual thing for Roman emperors, and he had a vision. And the vision was a flaming cross and a voice that said, "In this sign you will conquer." Constantine immediately issued the Edict of Milan. That was in 321 in the Common Era. And that made Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire. So Christians could come up out of catacombs and out of caves and other people's basements, and they could actually build churches. And I don't know whether they did it in thanks to Constantine or what, but churches are built in the shape of the court of the Emperor Constantine. So let me take you through it. Where we're standing now, which is between the two entrance doors, this part of the church is called the Narthex. Don't panic, there's no test, but that's the fancy Greek word for lobby. Now, this is where the people would come in and wait to enter the Great Hall. Now, here at St. John's on a Sunday morning, this is where we have coffee. And there's tables all around, as you'll see. We have coffee before and after the service. There's a move to have it during, but the dean is so far resisting that. So we have a coffee bar. However, this is the Narthex, which would be like the lobby of the court of the Emperor Constantine. But now we're going to move into what in Constantine's day would have been the Great Hall. Follow me. So this is the Great Hall. This is where people would sit and wait for an audience with the emperor. Now, it was called the Great Hall in Constantine's day. In our day, we call it the nave. The nave of the church is where the people sit. Nave comes from the Latin word navis, meaning ship, because Christians believe that when they are in church and sitting in the nave, they are on the ship of salvation. Follow me. We'll go up through the Great Hall, and now we go into what we call the transept. This is the cruciform part of the church. It's the crossbar of the church. Now, transept means the way across. This is the north transept, and this is the south transept. And it was just a sort of a breakaway piece between the Great Hall and the chancel. This is the chancel. This is the chancel. Now, at the court of Constantine, this is where the emperor's advisors would sit, his counselors, if you will. Nowadays, it's where the dean sits in that chair, the lay reader sits in that chair, and the choir sits in these pews. The organist sits at the organ console. This is then the chancel. Now then, this is the sanctuary. All Anglican, Roman Catholic, Lutheran churches refer to this as the sanctuary. It is where the altar is, our altar. But at the court of Constantine, this would have been where Constantine's throne was. Now, when they started building churches, of course, they dumped the throne and replaced it with an altar. However, in a cathedral, we still have a throne, and this is it. This is the cathedra. That's the Latin word meaning chair. It's the bishop's chair. It's the bishop's throne. When the bishop worships with us during communion in the high and holy seasons, this is where the bishop sits. On this side, these are called the sedalia. This is where the canons would sit. Canons, by the way, are Anglican clerics who are advisors to the dean. They are especially appointed by the bishop. Now, we have 9 canons, so if they parked in these, they'd have to be stacked 3 deep, and canons don't take kindly to stacking, so we put them in the south transept, and this is where the servers and the sacristan sit during Holy Communion in high and holy seasons.